Hi, welcome to another episode 7 of Paolo's podcast. What we're going to do right at the beginning is give you a disclaimer. And for those of you that are new to joining our podcast and trying to learn out new techniques, information, referrals, resources, we recommend not only listen to our podcast and watching it on YouTube and our other platforms, listening to it, going to our website, which is C is in concussion, P is in pain, M is in mental, H is in health, A is in awareness.com. And that is at the bottom of the YouTube screen in the left-hand corner, I believe. And also, too, we're very proud to announce that we're growing at a pretty fast pace, so it just shows that this is a national crisis and people are looking for this type of information. Even know that, again, in the disclaimer, I'm not a doctor or a professional in this matter. I'm strictly sharing my resources, my experiences to try to help those out there that might not know where to go and give them some suggestions that they could take to a professional to make sure they're in a safe setting. So the reason why we got to 1.7 thousand viewers in such a short period of time is that not only through our apprentice program that's been helping us market it with other people in their majors, and we encourage you to go to our website and look at those where that's another part of our mission is to help college students get a return on their investment and their degree and get a job that applies to their major. So look into that, but we're going to focus on the main subject of today, the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist and how to pick them, and some questions and time-saving tasks that might help you get the best out of finding the doctor that fits you that you might not have thought of or knew how to go about to reach. Now, this is kind of like a hard part because this has to deal with your personal circumstances. Not everybody has this, unfortunately. Not everybody has a support system. And for me personally, the challenges that I go through on a daily basis due to my disease, I need help, to be honest. And even though I'm a strong man and I have a large ego, a lot of stuff with paperwork and reading and stuff like that, I have to lean on close friends and support system that I have. But I know, unfortunately, in this world, it's pretty sad. People that have mental health issues, whether they're minor or severe, I think that's one of the things I'm so passionate about this cause is because it's hard for you to reach out and tell somebody and put those in words, what you're going through so you can get the type of help you want because of the so-called stigma attached to mental health. So there's many methods in finding the right psychologist and psychiatrist. I'm going to start off by talking about how I found a psychiatrist and how I had to go through a couple different psychiatrists to find the right one for me and what I didn't know about psychiatry that I was expecting when I went into my session. So, for instance, before my diagnosis, I was starting to get symptoms of depression, anxiety, slowly moving through. You could follow it through some of the symptoms through the first podcast, I believe, that we launched, how CPMHA was born. It lists some of the symptoms that I was battling. And no doctor was able to really put their finger and give it a real diagnosis until I was fortunate enough to come across a true sports neurologist that was able to determine this is what we think 99% based on the different tests and my past history it was. I am fortunate I have insurance. My father actually, and sad, I'm 50 years old, I should be independent, but when we're sick, we have to reach out to others. So those that don't have any family or any support system, or if you're homeless or something, it takes a lot of courage to ask for help, and you shouldn't feel embarrassed. So, you could go to the county, and we'll constantly be posting things on our website, different resources that you could use no matter what situation you're in. And if you don't have a computer, you could use the local library to view these podcasts. So we'll try to really make it easy as possible and accessible. So if you don't have the financial means to get this, you don't own your own computer, you can still get this important information, because mental health does not discriminate. It does not discriminate whether you're rich, poor, your religion, anything. So this is something that affects everybody, and for some reason the world is now starting to open up, because we know of all the problems with mass shootings or just depression or anxiety issues, small things that might be small to me compared to what I'm going through, but is very large to you and very important and a big problem. So it's painful. So we want to eliminate those pains and give you direction and resources to help you with those symptoms the best possible way. So going back to where I started off, my network and through my insurance, it lists psychiatrist, and I thought a psychiatrist was I could go in, tell them what my symptoms were, my concerns, and then if they found that I could trust them, then they would write a prescription to help me relieve those symptoms. For example, one was insomnia. It was driving me nuts, and sleep is so important. We talked about that in a previous podcast. Then I thought that I would be able to like vent, share my problems, get coping skills and directions. But the psychiatrist, that's where I learned, and this might not go for every psychiatrist, so I have to be careful and responsible with my words, not offend any psychiatrists. Like we call it dual diagnosis, is that they'll write a prescription based on what they think your symptoms are. And I'm not a big fan on labels. My process is I address the symptoms and not the actually diagnosis or the label of the diagnosis, because originally they found there was nothing wrong with me. And then I think at one point they thought I was bipolar. And then finally, after now, as the science is growing, they're learning about CTE. Just be very cautious of that and bring that in, and keep a journal of all your symptoms and be honest with that. So when you go into the doctor, if you pick a psychiatrist, know in, so you're not disappointed and you're frustrated, and you keep on fighting for the right treatment that's going to help you, because I believe if you work hard enough, and I know you're tired, especially with mental health, it can be so exhausting and frustrating because there's not a quick fix. It takes a lot of work, and if you have a job, family, and you also have a mental health issue, could be just backbreaking. So I applaud all of you that fight for yourself and take advantage of every day's the gift we have in life. Start to appreciate the small things and smell the roses, as they say. So with psychiatry, this is one of my thoughts on psychiatry. I have to be careful because I know plenty of people that have been put on medications that they've told me that it's saved their life. And it's about several years back. I don't know if some of you in the older generation, I'm 50 years old, but the younger generation, like the kids in my apprentice program, through a concussion awareness, never heard of the episode. It was on, I believe, an episode with Tom Cruise and Matt Lauer on NBC, where they were talking about how Tom Cruise did a lot of study, and I'm not bashing Tom Cruise. He was just speaking from his point of view. He turned a lot of people off, and he took the stance on that he thought antidepressants and Ritalin and a lot of the medications from Big Pharma, mood stabilizers, should never be prescribed. It does more damage, and you're better off. And I'm probably misquoting the show. If you're ever interested, it's on YouTube. It got a lot of flack on it because people, without being on the right medications, they could not function. They can't operate. So I'm neither pro or con against it because I'm not a doctor. I did have a bad experience, and these were some of my experiences when I was on the medications that I wanted to pass on to you, because you should always be involved with your doctor. Just don't look at them like they're magic and they have all the answers. You have to communicate, and I don't want to say second guess, it's probably the wrong word, but do the research and ask them about side effects. Because like 90% of the antidepressants has the side effect is they gain a lot of weight. And obviously when you gain a lot of weight, I'm a perfect example right now, that, it brings on other health conditions. But so there is other types of medications that might not have those type of side effects. And then I also go into is I was close friends with a pharmaceutical salesperson, and they told me what their job was to pretty much, they put it was sales, and they were paid on bonuses of how many prescriptions their doctors in their field, so if it's a psychiatrist, how many wrote their prescriptions. And they were paid on bonus structures. Now that might have changed. I know this was quite a few years back, but that sounded kind of like hypocritical, because now you're giving a doctor an incentive to write a prescription, where I think the only incentive should be to get the proper treatment and proper health. And advocate for yourself. I don't say you have to be suspicious. Hopefully the doctor you are working with has great ethics, and I believe in good, and 90% of the doctors do have good ethics. But once in a while you will find somebody that might have a different agenda and trying to make an extra couple dollars without hurting you really, because it has been FDA approved. But we want to make sure that you get all the ins and outs, or at least come in with the basic education of when you're going to go, whatever you're putting into your body. And then there's another thing too, is what I found, and I could even honestly say myself, is I had a real bad experience with one of my symptoms was insomnia. And I only would sleep like 1-2 hours a day, which besides my disease, anybody that gets that type of sleep and only has that broken sleep pattern could go psychotic. So sleep is so important. So I wanted to go on, ask for a medication that was non-addictive. And the doctor said, all right, well, this was good, because I've always been a workaholic, and when I'm committed, I'm in at 110%. I don't know how to do anything halfway. Even now with this campaign, I'm probably stretching the boundaries of my health because I'm so invested in helping those out there in the final chapter of my life. But for some reason, we are afraid, from my experience in talking in group settings and group meetings, or other people that suffer from mental health, will take the pain. And if a doctor suggests, oh, well, this antidepressant might help you out a little bit, they'll be reluctant, and they won't want to take it because they'll make whatever excuses for them, and they're afraid. But also, too, when we're in that crisis and we're in that real crunch time and that pain and whatever, for me, if my mind's racing, I'm not sleeping, and I'm in such physical, emotional pain, I will end up, I would end up reaching for an opiate and something like that, and that was prescribed to me. Where other people then will turn to alcohol, their drug of choice, or some other stuff, which makes no sense, but that's part of mental health, I believe. So we need to fix that pain, and we need that quick fix, right? Because we don't want to suffer. No one wants to see a loved one suffer. Nobody personally wants to suffer. So we go for that quick fix. Unfortunately, to my knowledge, none of the medications that are for antidepressants, mood stabilizers, a lot of the stuff that the psychiatrist, he or she, might prescribe to you, it takes a while for it to work and work with the brain receptors for you to get relief from your symptoms. I don't actually know if there's actually cures, but it can be managed by medication, and that's the benefits. And there are stories out there where people have said, thank God this medication is out there. I wouldn't have been able to cope and be functional and be a productive adult and take care of my family and friends. And that saved their life. So awesome, so that's a great example of somebody that found a method that worked for them. With me, when I went on this medicine. It's I forgot what it was. This is what happens with my brain. Alex, do you remember what the Seroquel? That's why I have my buddies watching me. Well, you just got a first taste of what happens to my brain now as it starts to deteriorate. I get brain freezes, and then thankfully I have a support system that will feed me cheat sheets and notes where I left off. So the medicine that they put me on was Seroquel, and this was a couple years back. And it was supposed to be to slow down my racing thoughts. It wasn't a painkiller. It was a mood stabilizer, but the side effect was it would help you sleep. And so they used that as my treatment because I didn't want anything addictive. And but the bad part was that it put on, the weight I started gaining was, even while I was exercising, eating clean, and doing things that I'm not doing now that's putting on the weight because my body's deteriorating, not to make an excuse. But the medicine was very horrible, and I think you could research it yourself because there's been a lot of legal firms now that are promoting it and saying if you were ever on Seroquel and you have these symptoms, please contact our office because they're filing lawsuits against that medication. And I don't know if it's been discontinued or not. I'm not that educated on that. But that's just one example of where you got to be really careful what we put into our body. That has been prescribed, that you put your trust into the doctor and they just wrote it because they get the pamphlet. They don't do the bio research on it. They just go on the pamphlet and they put it in. They said this will help you. Like right now, for some of my migraine medications, or I'm on trial medications where there's not enough data on a lot of them, and I don't know what's going to happen. But because of my case, there's no cure for it. I really have nothing to lose. But if you're in a different situation where you could still live with your disease and have a good life, there might be less of a risk that you would have to take than me to continue to be functional. And then this was going to be, my philosophy will also apply to picking out a psychologist, is I believe, and this is not being gender biased, so I don't want to get any hate mail or stuff like that, because this is just my personal feeling. Like my sister, for example, when I started, our family has such a hard time talking about mental health. It's a very uncomfortable subject to talk about, which is, again, goes with our campaign of trying to change the stigma. If you could talk about a neighbor that has cancer and they're open about it and they get different suggestions and people tell them about great doctors and these new medicines that are out there, why can't we have that same conversation about this disease of mental health? I believe that a female, if you have the choice, obviously you want to go with the best doctor possible, whether it's a man or a woman. But if you have a choice and someone that has the same credentials, a female, B, a male doctor, and they have the same credentials and they specialize in your symptoms that you're trying to fit, I believe that a female should talk with a female doctor because it'll make your setting, and just because of the gender, you might have more of something to relate with that person, and they could give you better personal skills and tips based on common gender that you have in common. So that being said, so I went over the gender part, picking out a doctor if you can, if you're fortunate or not. And then if you don't have insurance, unfortunately, in the society we have, which it's so messed up, not everybody can afford insurance. If you go to our website, we're now a strategic partnership with NAMI, N-A-M-I. So the president of that foundation is Dr. Kelly Everson. She's an amazing doctor, a psychologist, and we'll be referring patients down South Florida to her practice, but also nationwide. NAMI has a lot of great resources and programs that might fit your budget if you don't have health insurance. And if you can't afford a doctor, and first of all, you ask them when you make that call, you ask them if they take your insurance. And if you don't have your insurance, a good thing to ask is would they work with you on a sliding scale? And that means based off of your income, you talk to the person at the office administration and you say, hey, I make X amount of money a month, or I'm on disability, I have XYZ, and then the sliding scale will it will come out hopefully as and they'll take it as a percentage, almost they'll equal a co-payment from insurance. That's my understanding. Now, the difference between the psychiatrists I mentioned, they can prescribe medication. They most likely are not going to do physical therapy. They're about taking in, evaluating you, going over the symptoms. Don't let them rush you. This is your time. They work for you. You paid for this session. Go through, come in prepared, and have everything. And also, I recommend the same things I'm going to recommend for the psychologist session. Bring a recorder and record the information, because sometimes the doctors and me with my cognitive issues, they speak too fast, or their vocabulary is speaking out of a medical dictionary, and I don't understand everything they're saying, or they don't really understand since my disease is so new. They really don't really know how to communicate with me. And I try to be not as proud, and I will try to tell them to slow down their speech, ask them to re-explain it. But again, it's one of my problems I have with some physicians is everything's on the clock because they have to see so many patients in a day. But don't let them rush you without getting the service that you need. So record, take notes, whatever works well for you, so you can remember it, digest it, and then possibly do your own research at home. I know some doctors are against you. Like if they suggest, say, hey, we think you have this, but they don't want you to go in and research it, because then it might make you think that you actually have this symptom or this diagnosis, and then that might be it. But I'm confident in speaking for myself. I did a lot of research, and I self-advocated for myself, and I brought in a lot of information that the doctors didn't even know how to treat. So it's for them to research, to keep me in check, to tell me no, if that was a good fit. So I will leave that, and now I'm going to talk about psychologists. We're transitioning into my personal experiences, that if I had to give myself suggestions, how I would pick a psychologist and what they do and how to get the most out of the session. But I just wanted to do, just leave this as a note, because it also applied to at the end when I finished talking about the psychology part, is if there's anything, we have this outlined in bullet points that I think are the main talking points that people are looking for based on my experience. But obviously I can't pick everybody's brain and don't have the answers to everyone's questions. So below, if you're watching it on YouTube, you're not listening to it on one of our other platforms, you could feel free to email us at info@cpmha.com. And you can submit any content or questions you had about this episode, or research material that you would like us to post on our resource drop-down menu that will hopefully help you out. Now I'm going to go on to psychologists. So as I mentioned with a psychiatrist, when you go in, they may or may not provide therapy sessions where it's like a one-on-one therapy session where you could just vent, talk about your problems, and they give you coping skills. From my experiences, the psychiatrists that I've seen has been the first session will be a little bit longer, just for them to get an understanding of feel, for you explain the checkbox of, do you have these symptoms? And then they'll put you in a box and they'll label you, and then they'll write you scripts. And the scripts it could be maddening, because nothing what works for you might not work for me, and they'll constantly keep you on a trial basis, and that could be frustrating. So what I liked about psychology, and if you go to our first episode, how CPMHA was born, I thought that was good. It's a real life story. When I was pretty much at rock bottom, and now my disease in the last 2 weeks has hit dropped another level. And right now, whenever I get in front of the camera and I go out in public, I put this mask on, which we talk in other podcasts, is I try to stay positive and put out a positive energy to help people, because if I come to you and express my hidden pain and mope around. That's going to be a really depressing episode, and that might trigger you with some of your symptoms. So we try to be responsible with some of our topics, but you always have to be cautious when you're doing your own research of what you're doing, that you could be aware. I use almost the phrase that's in AA is people, places, and things. There could be good people in your life and good places and good things. And same thing goes for when you're doing your own research or you're working with a doctor. So you want to make sure it's always in your advantage and it's positive. So when I'm working with my psychologist, and this has to do with my cognitive issues. So my neurologist, when we came down with the diagnosis, and I knew that if, again, I don't want to, it'll take up too much time, go to our website, go to Paolo's story, you'll see the symptoms that I have and I have to battle every day. And I use my sessions with Dr. Russell A. Bourne, who has kept me alive now. I think for 2 years I've been diagnosed. I might be wrong. If you guys check the dates, my memory's going. He will give me, I come in prepared. So some people, and I don't know if I could say, oh, this is wrong, but this is not how I attack it, because I want every moment. Time is my most precious commodity. And so if I only have 1 hour with Dr. Bourne and he has a waiting list of patients, that's my psychologist, and he's a cognitive psychologist who has amazing resume. And I was really blessed by him coming across my path, and that's in episode 1, how he did. And I've had other great psychologists who had, graduated from Ivy League schools, had all the great degrees, great personalities, but there wasn't that connection, and I didn't get those learning coping skills. But also, too, I didn't have the symptoms that I had now, so I don't want to be throwing those people under the bus. I think they were doing the best that they could with what they had to work with at that time. I'm going to go through a couple of suggestions of preparing yourself to get the most out of the session, and some other ways that I used to do it, and think, because when someone says, okay, go for therapy, this might be really helpful to learn from a doctor, somebody who's a professional and deals with your diagnosis or symptoms. So you want to go to somebody, and some people come in and the first thing the doctor will say, okay, so what can I help you with today? And immediately we'll just unload all the garbage and pain, and we'll just go. And to me, I've done it. So I did it, and I would tell them every symptom, every problem. Like I wanted to fix things. I wanted that pill to give me instant gratification, solve everything in one session. But that's not how therapy works. So therapy is a long process. You can spread it out along the way it is, but it's like losing weight. I'm not going to go to the gym today and drop 50 pounds, okay? So it has to be repetition, constantly working, bonding, having the doctor learn more about you, your triggers, and hopefully he could give you good techniques where, no one's perfect, where 90% of them will work for you. And you'll start feeling, and if you're not seeing the results, you're not getting coping skills to help you get through the days without, like I'm doing it without medication, doing it through trying to find distractions. One example is where I used to do when I was in a dark depression. And a lot of people could probably relate to this without having my disease, is that I would lock myself in a dark room, and it would be like chains wrapped around me, and I'd be just stuck in the bed, and I couldn't move. I didn't have any energy, and I was just, you're searching for peace and to be pain-free. But at the same time if you stay in that dark room, there's nothing wrong with resting and recuperating. You don't have to go on like me and be a workaholic. But what his coping skill was, he gave me, is never stay in one location too long. So I'm not saying you get in the car and go for a long trip, but it could be simply, okay, reading a book, watching something, always watching things happy or funny, or I stay away from news, like all the political stuff on TV. I stay away from social media. My apprenticeships, interns doing it, and some of our board members helping me with that. And it's strictly to promote and spread awareness. It's not taking a position on politics or religion. It's strictly to promote the programs that we're doing to spread awareness. So I find that is very negative and extracting, and it's actually not healthy for me. And I think there's been studies it's not healthy. Some of the new technology is not healthy. By moving yourself around, that will actually change your the depression. It'll help you get out of that darkness. But it takes power. And if you can't do it every day, and that's why I say keep a journal. And if you, right now at the beginning, it's like running a marathon. If I had, and I was, if you look at my background, I was a pretty decent athlete. I would say I was a pretty decent entrepreneur, and I always worked and had nothing to do. But if you ask me to run around the block right now, between the physical pain and being so overweight that I'm in control of, that's my choice. That I'm hopefully going to make the next step for constantly be improvement, is that I couldn't do it, run around the block. If you asked me 3 years ago when I was 100 pounds lighter and was constantly, I was part of one of my companies is to work out. I hated working out because that was my job, but I did it to keep my body in shape, just like you fix a leak in the ceiling so your roof doesn't fall in. So that was that. So keeping a diary of your ups and downs, all the symptoms, and your day-to-day activity, put them in bullet points. So you then, instead of just coming out and just spewing out everything and not giving the doctor, because you only have like between 45 minutes with some therapist to an hour, what I like to do is try to focus all these the pain points that I'm going through and all my symptoms I can't break through and find coping skills for, and then use his knowledge or her knowledge and get homework assignments. So what I do, and not every doctor will work like this, but I happen to have a brilliant one, psychologist, that, like I said, he can't write medications. So he can only treat me through coping skills and the homework. I'm a worker, so I say, look, I need homework. I need to leave here with instructions how I can make myself a better man tomorrow. And that's actually one of the reasons why CPMH was born, concussion, pain, mental health awareness. So I take that and I email him ahead of time. So I know he has a huge practice waiting list, like I said, but hopefully he's had time to read it and digest it and get his thought process in order, just like yourself in his position or her position. So with that, it will speed up and you'll be able to maximize your session and get the most out of it because they work for you, the doctor, and you have had the courage to reach out for help. So let's get this and make it most productive. So by putting everything in order, okay, and then read it out loud, your questions. I do it by a notebook, even though my vision is really going bad. So for example, so I look at my notes, and this is one point I like, one of the pain points or symptoms that I want to address. I have to be completely honest with the doctor so he can give me the right coping skill and homework to work on. So either it's going to reduce that symptom or it'll help me stay away from a trigger. So one of my, lately, as my disease has been accelerating and my pain has been worsening, and so I would go to my note and I would tell the doctor, I'd say, I'm not acting out, but I have been through the pain. I try not to feel like a victim, but I have had my suicidal thoughts are growing because I just can't handle it some days. And so maybe out of 7 days, I'm thinking about it, just crossed in my mind about, just end it and rest, you deserve it. And then by me sharing that and not having it in my note, and put it in a right word, he could then look at me and give me a coping strategy that will, or something to work on to stay away from whatever is triggering me. He might ask me, okay, what made you, would you tell me about that day, or what came through? Were you watching something? Were you going through a family book? Were you doing research? Were you not getting enough sleep? He'll go through a whole bunch of checks and balances to try to find out what made me come about that thought process of that trigger of suicide. And that could apply to depression, anxiety, the variety of mental illnesses. That's what my psychologist, and that's how has kept me alive to today and in the fight. So I would leave there with homework, and now obviously when I know they're not going to go away because the pain comes, but we have a great arrangement, and it actually helped me before, that if whenever I do feel like he's, and this is where it comes with a trust factor, and not every psychologist is going to be this great and open and amazing, and this is why it's important to find somebody you feel safe and trust with. We have an arrangement, and it's not by any means do I ever advocate for anybody ever to take their own life or ever to hurt anybody else, because we heard, unfortunately, with mental health, the people that love us, they see us going through pain, that's enough collateral damage, and they get hurt by that, but they can't fix us. But in order to trust, and different people are at different pain levels, and there might not be answers and stuff. So one of the rules that we have in our relationship is, and the trust is, if I do feel like I am going to act out and I am going to go through that extreme, that's probably like there's a lot of scenarios, but that is probably one of the most serious one, with suicide on the rise right now due to multiple issues around the world, is that I call him and let him know first. And this is why the man has a special gift, and I hope this could help somebody else, is that he says, look, I'm not going to talk you out of it. If you're really at that point in your life, you owe me a phone call, and it's like, I could take an attitude and say, I don't know anybody, anything, selfish, but I do. This man has given me his time and invested in trying to help me. So just being a good human being, I owe it to him. If I make, my word is my bond. If I make a promise to you, I'll keep it. And I was just raised that way. And thankfully, I still have that healthy mindset. And but if I tell you I won't, or if I can't do it, I'll tell you that too. And some people might take that direction. So if you make a commitment with, especially your professional, make sure you keep that rule. So I'll give you one that might actually help you. So there was one day, it was two times. The first time I met him, I told him I was going to commit suicide, but I was scared of, if I jumped off a bridge, that I would break every leg and I'd be still alive and I'd be in worse shape. And that's just the way my luck goes. And then the other thing, so what he did, I called him and I said, hey, doc, the pain and the sounds and all my symptoms are at a maximum level. And I said, I'm just going to take a drive down south. It's time for me just to put down that wounded dog, like Gold Yellow, I guess. He didn't even stop. They didn't even say, no, don't do that, or come over to the hospital or Baker Act you, or anything like that. He said, okay, Paolo, did you think it through? And he says, how are you going to do it? And I had no answer. I was like, I just knew the pain was so bad I wanted it to end. But I didn't think about the thought process through, or I was trying to think of something peaceful and not hurtful. And I told him, I said, well, maybe I'll just go off the boat and I'll just take some pills and drown. He was in the Coast Guard. He said, drowning is a terrible way to go. He said, you don't want to do that. And you don't want to, take a needle and try to overdose because then parents find it's dirty. And he just kept on checking it. So the bottom line, to make the story quick, and I know it's depressing, and hopefully, please let this be a positive experience. Don't let this be a trigger to anybody, is that The thing was, I didn't have a plan. I didn't think it thoroughly out. I would have been impulsive. And when you commit suicide, there's no coming back. So this was a while ago. And what he did was, if you really at that spot, then, but you didn't think it through, you don't have a plan, you don't do it, so it's not your time yet. And when it's your time, you'll know, and I'll be honest with you, and we'll talk it through together. He didn't say, put himself in and break his Hippocratic oath or anything like that. He just did what I believe a great psychologist should do. He just gave me a coping skill to get through it, and he spotted a couple of things that I was doing that day that were probably bringing on triggers, people that I was around. So he told me, he said, instead of going this super dark way where you can't help other people with your campaign, and you can't help, the people that are close to you, like Alexander, who was on our board of directors, and I want to help. He's like my little brother, and I want to see the best things for him. I don't want to hurt anybody, I was kind of being selfish. So he told me, he said, look, your brain is ringing, it's not a muscle, it's an organ. And because I'm so used to working at such a high speed because of my dyslexia and I had to outwork people to see results, is that I was setting myself up with burnout. So he said, listen, why don't you try this? Instead of going to the extreme and hurting yourself and hurting someone else, why don't you do something that doesn't cost any money, because I didn't have the big finances to go to a spa or a resort. I live 15 minutes away from the water, and I went down and I meditated, and because I'm so fat and overweight right now, and I have that self-image, and hopefully it doesn't hurt anybody else, but we all know it, that by looking at me, I'm self-conscious, and I was able to go. It was low tide, and I have a pool too to do my exercises for my rehab work for my back. And I meditated, and I laid, and I never used to be able to do this when I was all muscle, but because the fat made me buoyant, and I laid back and I meditated in the water, and just like with my arms out, and I floated perfectly like I was on a raft, and it was low tide, so all the noises, and like my heart goes out to anybody that's schizophrenic, because I'm not schizophrenic, it's part of my disease, I don't know if it was the ocean, or if it was just the water. The ocean was like a lake that day. All the sounds and all the pain just left my body. It could be like a placebo effect that happened, but I was just following my doctor's coping skills, and I felt relief. When I got up out of the thing, my body pressure put down, a lot of pains came back, but all those noise and the things that would make me maddening, and a lot of the sympathies through all the concussions went away by one simple thing. And if I didn't do that, and I would have took the extreme impulsive route and went out, I wouldn't be here today to be able to share this, to hopefully help you guys. So as I'm giving you different type of suggestions as to make your session with your therapist most productive and maximize the time and be efficient, there's the thing about being there's two sides to every story. Okay, now what I mean by that is that if you're there, you have to be willing to be honest and let them know everything that's deep, dark in your mind. He or she is not there to judge you. They're there to learn. They can only help you if they have as much information about what's going on with you, all the problems, all the dark thoughts, physical, environmental, family dynamics, anything like that. So please, if you're going to go that extra mile and you want to see results and you're in that pain, you have to let everything out, and because you're in a safe setting. Now, I do not say you have to do that, and that's called sharing. You don't have to do that with your friends, your neighbors, your family. That's just because they're not trained the way these specialists are, and to deal with mental health. And even if it's the other subjects is addiction, which we'll go in, and we went into another topic, is that you have to be completely honest. Otherwise, you're just lying to yourself and you're lying to him. It's a waste of time. Don't even go. So when you go in, I tell them what other people, because I might be defensive about what my girlfriend might be snapping down my back about something, and she doesn't understand that if I got hot or annoyed or reacted in a certain way, or I raised my voice or did something that was hurtful to her, and then I say, I'm sorry. And she says, well, you always do that. And then I had a hard time putting it in words. And so I always have to give the doctor the information of their side. I can't come in and just give my side, because then my doctor, who's excellent, gives me and say, well, you know what, Paolo, you were wrong in that situation, and you can learn from your mistakes. And it's not just about selling yourself and saying, well, they shouldn't have talked to you that way. They don't know your situation. My doctor doesn't do that. My doctor calls me out, and I respect that. I like constructive criticism. I don't want somebody just to say, oh, okay, Paolo, well, they don't know how bad it is, and you're going through this. They can't understand. They can't. But it doesn't excuse my behaviors if I react to them. So that's what I have to work at in my next therapy session. So it's very important, and it's courageous for you to tell that side of the story. And if your therapist is really good, they'll call you on your bullshit, and take that not as offense, take that as you be thankful, is that they're honest with you and they're helping you call you on your bullshit so you don't repeat that unhealthy behavior pattern. And like I tell one of the young men I mentor, is that people who truly love you and really care about you will tell you things that you not necessarily want to hear. And I believe that. And because it's easy to tell somebody, boy, you look great. You know, you do all these things, and they just boost up stuff. But then when they go around the corner, they talk about you behind your back. They might say something totally different. So that's not honest. So that's how you know somebody you can truly trust tells you not always things that you want to hear, but things that are accurate, honest, and at the same time, as if you're hurting, give you a hug and lift you up and be sensitive, because not every time is the time to be somebody to preach, especially if you're not trained. And that's one of my faults, is I try to help everybody because I have a big heart, and I have to learn to listen more sometimes than give advice. But again, that's one of the things I'm working on. I'm going to wrap it up with this. I really recommend it. Really, it's just something that I identified with, because I use the example, if I say, hey, I love my mother and father, and then you tell me you love your mother and father, my definition might be totally different of love than your relationship. So it's, the word is very hard to explain. The same thing goes is your symptoms or your disease. You might have a hard time putting in words what you're feeling and what you're frustrated with and what you're going through. And that's why that checklist, the more the therapist learns about you, they can give you directions. And if they're not giving you the right directions, then move on, because there's so many brilliant people out there, and you will find them. You know, ask around for friends and family that you trust, that don't have big mouths, that aren't going to betray your confidence. And seek somebody else out, because you're fighting for yourself. And then the strength in numbers, so we're building strategic partnerships on our website. So use our referrals, because we vet them and we screen them. And then I just want to share something, because I thought it needs support, because in the COVID virus we're in right now, we have a special program we're developing for our frontline health workers, but for support, where they could get a little venting out. But we're not professionals, we're not doctors, so it's not a real therapy session, but it is a group therapy session, voluntarily, through our grad students and people that care, where you could just vent a little bit and learn from your peers. But one of the great stories that I was looking for, that I was very interested in, and I was a big fan of his, was Robin Williams. And if you get a chance, watch his documentary. It's called Robin's Wish, and it was based on The End. and they use some words. I have a couple of our interns doing papers on it right now, and we'll be posting that. They use a couple of ways. If anybody remembers how he was, it would caught everybody off surprise, because what we saw from the outside, we saw somebody brilliant and funny and was doing so many movies, and then takes his life. And then we're all left, those who didn't know him personally, didn't know the pain that he was going through. And not being a spoiler alert, but I'm just going to give you a quick hint because it applies to something. If you don't watch it, I want you to walk away with this knowledge, is that he did seek a lot of treatment. And due to it, I think it was the diagnosis after the autopsy was Lewy body dementia. Okay, and it came with a lot of things I identified with. And it's very painful emotionally. Mine's different. When you look at my symptoms, mine comes from physical pain as well, and migraines that are maddening. The mind is a really scary thing. It's brilliant. It's an amazing machine we have built, but the mainframe is just can only hold so much, and when it goes off circuits, it could be extremely scary. He was diagnosed with bipolar, and they were treating him with bipolar, and so they were treating him wrong. I'm just second guessing. It's like I identified with it because they originally, when I was seeking for help and I knew something was broken inside my head, and I didn't know, I thought it was Alzheimer's disease, early onset Alzheimer's, that this was it. And then it happened to be, like, if you follow our story, how I finally found some type of, I don't want to say closure, but it just made me feel good that I had some type of way to figure out a puzzle and work on those symptoms and get to the next step. So if I left anything out in here that you want us to bring up, or we want to research on how to get the most out of your psychologist or your therapy session, again, there's social workers that have the same type of training but not as deep as a PhD psychologist. And anything we left out, I tried to do my best. And I'm constantly working very hard on myself. I used to be speaking in front of thousands of athletes, and I use a lot of sports analogies because of my background. But I apologize if I'm not as articulate. My vocabulary is not as helps lose focus, and but I'm working on it. And I appreciate your patience. And some of my stuttering that I do, come on, now you'll know why, is because my brain freezes. And while I talk, I hear ringing and buzzing. So it's kind of a wild experience. And that's it. So in closing, please help us grow this channel so we can spread this. Tell your friends, post on your social media, to go to the website. When you go to the website, cpmha.com, stands for Concussions, Pain, Mental Health Awareness, is that go to the top, follow us on our social media. It's on the homepage. Then you could see the programs on the bottom of the homepage, and then go through the drop-down menus, and we'll have resources for you. And subscribe, like, and go to the bell. That'll notify you of new podcasts coming up, and I'll be bringing in different guests and different formats so you can I can learn what is going to help you as the audience. And it's not about me, Paolo. It's about our campaign that'll live on beyond myself. And please, if you know any students, whether they're business or anything, go to our National College Apprentice Program. And it's another gift we're trying to give back, is helping students land their job after they get their degree and learn true life skills of whatever their major is, as long as it falls in our itinerary, through our apprentice program. And it's all on there, so pass that on through real life skills that they don't learn in the classroom, that I could still be able to be of some help through my past business experience. That doesn't include the psychology, but also at the same time helps our campaign. Thank you very much for today.